Well, welcome to our podcast. I am Dean Nixon again with, as always, and I never get tired of saying it, the lovely Kate Simmons.
And I never get tired of hearing it, so that works for me.
that works for both of us.
Hi, everybody.
It is so good to have you listening into our podcasts. We are excited for those of you that are rejoining us and those of you that have been, sharing our podcast, liking our podcast, etc. It's been really awesome.
Yeah, just a giant thank you to that. We feel like the content that we bring you each and every week has lots of value. And so the more that we can spread our message across the globe and work to, break down some of those barriers that we have in our own self, we're always looking at the self, it really helps. So thanks, everybody.
Absolutely. Again, we want to remind everybody that the views and opinions that we express are our own. Mm-hmm. And we don't necessarily want to offend other people, but if you disagree with us, we are okay with that.
Absolutely.
And if you want to comment in the comments or message us ideas or comments or things that you would like to hear us talk about or different points of view, we would love to hear them.
Yes, we would embrace all of that. In fact, if you do disagree with us, please comment.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, we're good with that. So today, as promised from the last podcast, we're going to talk about pain.
Oh, we're bringing in the pain. I love it.
Ooh, I did the puff again. Sorry, people. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about pain again, and the last couple podcasts we've been really working on understanding the self, understanding our relationships, understanding why we draw certain people to us. And this really just seemed to be the next maturation, the next process, the next step in the conversation.
Yeah, and that's been actually a really fun part for me. I don't know if it's been for you, Dean, or for anybody listening, but it seems like when we get towards the end of a podcast, our hour-ish runs up and we're like, all right, wrapping up, and then the next topic just emerges. Yeah. So I'm loving it.
It is organic, which I do like that. So the premise is to really, and this is why I was bringing it up at the end of the last podcast, is, pain itself is something that we as human beings have avoided and avoid. Mm-hmm. Since the dawn of time, we've been trying to figure out ways to avoid the emotional discomfort and the physical discomfort that we feel. And there's a lot of positives. There's a lot of upsides to this. Yes. And I'm going to cover those first, if that's okay.
I love it.
You just interrupt anytime.
Okay.
So the reason that avoiding pain and discomfort is so important for us as human beings is because it really helps us to progress. We develop a lot of comforts in our life. We develop a lot of things the way they are because of it. So I always refer back to growing up in the back of an old Buick. And, when I was a kid, we'd drive clear down from Salt Lake City, Utah to Santa Barbara, California to visit family. And we'd drive across the desert. There was no air conditioning really to speak of during that period of time. You're driving past, Baker and across some of those areas that are just
some of the hottest places on the planet.
Hot as hell. And, we'd have the windows down. Then sometimes it'd be freezing cold. And I remember, laying on the floor, and there was always the hump in the middle of the car back in the day. Mm-hmm. And that's where the exhaust and the drivetrain ran. And it was just super warm. And I'd just be like huddling the floorboard, warming up, falling asleep up in the back window behind, like nowadays you see people's cats and dogs up in there. Uh-huh. But when I was a kid, it was the kids. You just see kids up in there, napping and sleeping. And so I look at, the safety and the way things have gotten safer.
Right.
But I also look at the comfort level of things. Things nowadays with heated seats, heated steering wheels, air conditioning, all these things. And these are really good things because we have avoided discomfort. We've avoided being uncomfortable.
Right.
And that's why our homes are a lot more comfortable than they've ever been. The seating that we, chairs we sit in are a lot more comfortable than ever before. So we seek comfort, and that's the premise I want to start with. I want to kick us out with this concept of seeking comfort versus pain.
Right. And I love that we're starting there. And I love that you brought up those examples, Dean, because just right off the bat, my head goes to, yeah, you're right. Like all of the advances that we've made as a society has been, at least industrially, right, has been in order to solve some sort of uncomfort, to not be uncomfortable. Even seatbelts and seatbelt laws, right? It's uncomfortable when we lose loved ones to experiences like that, where we could still have them around in our lives and on the planet if they would have been wearing a seatbelt instead of taking a cat nap in the back window.
Yes, I'm confident that was probably one of the disastrous results of that lifestyle.
Right, yes. Right. But yeah, I mean, and I'm not that far behind you in the trail of years, but I too can remember going for road trips and just being in the back of our station wagon, chilling, hanging out with my sisters, obviously not seatbelted in, and just rummaging around back there. And
the old seats that faced backwards.
Yes.
And it was always so funny to me that you'd roll the window down. We'd be like, roll the window down, and we'd stick our feet out the back, but whole time exhaust is coming into the car. So you're like getting that back swirl, so you're getting this carbon monoxide poisoning. You're like laying there with your feet sticking out the window, and like so many things that they don't let us do anymore.
Right.
And it was that fun part of it, but it is this idea of craving and seeking comfort and looking for that safe place to be, and versus discomfort. And so I know I'm using this physical as a metaphor because we know our show is always about the mind construct and the way we think as human beings, and how that's really, really been orchestrated by. And that's what I'm proposing. I'm pushing this forward to us, to you listeners. I'm pushing forward for contemplation and discussion the idea of how much of your belief about who you are has been created by the construct of seeking comfort, avoiding pain.
Right, yes.
And how much of that has created your identity.
I love that. And I love that we've separated the two, because I think looking at each of them individually that way, but also understanding that they do feed off of each other. It's like teeter-totter, or that time metronome, right? It's like a bounce back and forth between the two, where when we look at them separately, we can gain a lot of wisdom, but looking at them in conjunction to each other, that there's even a whole nother layer that goes on that. And then to throw in the viewpoint of how that has molded and shaped you, me, all of us on the planet, to the choices that we make, to even, I think, bits of how we interact with one another, and our relationship development, and how we see ourself, our self-development, our self-worth. All of those things can have a thread. Obviously, there's other threads and things that go into the creation of that, but definitely a pretty strong thread and tie is this relationship between comfort and pain.
Right. Yeah. And that is really interesting to me because of the development of the psyche, the development of you as a human being. So you as the listener, you're a lot of, and this is again, the pitch is how much of your development, well, we know a lot of it. We know a lot of it, even starting with discipline. Right?
Yeah.
So growing up, and no disrespect to my father. My father's a great man, still around, 95, World War II vet, amazing guy. But he raised us with the belt, and you got the belt. I could still hear it coming out of his belt loops. You know that sound as he'd just whip it out of his belt loop and double it over, and then giving us the belt for things. And so there's even a level of curbing behaviors and discipline that came from pain, and that idea of who I am was impacted by, I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to feel that physical pain.
Right.
But even to that point, there was a point where we have avoided emotional pain and discomfort, and how much of our self-identity has been developed by that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it blows my mind sometimes. And then how much of that, if we choose not to look at it and choose not to like really kind of go after it, which is another really huge piece to our podcast, is to put light and bring light into these things so that you individually and we as a collective society can start taking a look at these things and shedding a light on it in order to be able to transform it and make it into something that's evolutionary, right? That we grow and evolve from. And so I think there's so many pieces to our behaviors, like you're talking about, that we are just not even really aware of. They're just automatic. They kick in. We don't really. Dean winced when I snapped. It's like, oh, geez,
really loud in my ear.
A loud snap. But they just kick in and we react, right? Without even thought. And these are those places that layer upon layer we've just made automatic responses to, based on going back to our childhood and the way that things happened that way.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so as we think about that, we're thinking about the two different types of pain, right? So, or I want to introduce, forgive me. I want to introduce the idea that there's two types of pain that we experience. We have the emotion, I'm stuttering.
Here we go.
I'm ramping up, so bear with me, people. There you go. Humanity, slip it in. So there's two types of emotional pain and discomfort that we feel, and I talk a lot about this in the seminar, in our Level 1 Awakening seminar, the 3-day process. And that seminar is the one where we really sit down and we start to disconnect ourselves from the way we've allowed the world to affect us and impact us in a negative way.
Yes.
So this is one of the first principles I lead out with, is there's two types of emotional pain and discomfort. We have necessary emotional pain and discomfort, and we have unnecessary emotional pain and discomfort. Mm-hmm. And so this necessary emotional pain and discomfort is the stuff that we need the most. It's what is the creator of coping skills. Mm-hmm. It's the creator of confidence. It's the creator of all growth emotionally comes from that necessary emotional pain and discomfort.
Right. Yeah, and I think that like a huge key component to the necessary piece is that it's universal. No one is exempt from this.
Nobody.
Right?
Yeah.
Every single human, like probably every single mechanism on the whole planet, right? Like mammals, all of it. Like all of us are going to experience necessary pain and discomfort. It's just part of being a part of the planet right now. I think inevitably, right? Like since the beginning of time, it's just part of the process. And I don't know why I'm heading this way just really quickly, but it's really easy once again to kind of look through a different lens and think, oh, this person never really experiences pain, right? Their life is just rosy and peachy, and they make millions of dollars every year, and they have multiple houses, and they've got beautiful children, and they've got, da-da-da-da-da. Like, of course, this person doesn't experience pain or discomfort, and that simply isn't true. Like, no one is exempt from this. And so it's the great equalizer, that I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Like, it boils us down and makes, like, us all on the same playing field as far as equality. There is no hierarchy to that.
There isn't a hierarchy of it, and that is really frustrating for people, because everybody has to really at some point use this as a touch point. I do know, and I like that you've gone down this path, and I want to kind of lean into it for a minute. I know it's a little bit of a side note, but I do want to lean into this because we live in a world of that's driven by social media. We live in a world right now that's driven by TikTok and Instagram and the waning hours of Facebook. I'm assuming not as much, but there's this belief that we're watching and we're driven by celebrities. We're driven by these people that have caught enough of our attention that all we do is we watch their little TikTok, or we watch their videos, and we think to ourselves, when we get these little snapshots, these little 30-second vignettes of their lives, that we think that they're better than we are, that they're happy because we're seeing them happy.
Or that they figured something out that we haven't.
And,
right?
and they're better because they have a better life than we have. But the reality is every single one of those individuals is required to feel emotional pain and discomfort the exact same way, not exact, but in similar fashion, in the sense, when I say exact same way, meaning they have to suffer. Everybody suffers. Everybody feels that emotional pain and discomfort. And once we recognize that, it is very freeing. But until we recognize that, we are caught up in this dream world that there's something wrong with my life and there's something better with their lives. And so then you see people putting on their best smiles and putting on their best looks and their best pictures from the family vacation. That's always the fun one, is like you took like 500 photos and you post 3.
They were the ones that turned out
and
best.
They were the ones where Johnny's not choking his brother in the back seat. Don't post that one. The reality photos, the reality of some cottage cheese fat that you've got, or some, dark circles, or some hair tufts, or the hair coming out your ears photo, or whatever it is. Like, we just don't show that side of who we are. But the reality is everybody has that. And then we also live in that world where nobody wants to see it.
Right.
Because again, there's this pain versus comfort. And we want to believe, Kate, and this is the part that's so infuriating to me, is we want to believe that there is a state of being where there is no discomfort.
Right.
So when we see these people that have been showing their pictures and they look a certain way, and then we see their real view, we get mad and we criticize them. And we start, oh, she's this, oh, she's that. And we start laying into them. As celebrities take this beating and they get frustrated, like, going after celebrities because, it looks like you put on 40 pounds. It looks like this. It looks like that. Why aren't you taking care of yourself? The reason these people are going after you is because they want to believe on some level that there is this place that everybody can achieve. Even if they never achieve it, they want to believe that it's achievable. So the minute you reveal your humanity, the minute you reveal your reality, they can't deal with it. So they're going to criticize it, judge it, discount you, knock you off your pedestal, and discard you. And that goes back to that belief system. Man, we got somebody racing around again today. It goes back to this belief system that we have to be perfect in order to avoid discomfort.
Right. And I'm just, it's so fascinating. And it's almost like we have the people that come in perfection in our minds, right? Like the celebrities and things that we're talking about, right? They come in all rosy, and then they have that experience of where they fall into humanity. And then, like you were saying, Dean, we love to crucify that, right? Like it almost is some sick, twisted thing that happens inside us as humans. And then on the flip side, I'm just thinking about all the people that go through the struggle, like very, like a lot of great leaders, or, I'm just thinking about a lot of different biographies that I've read, or that underdog story, right? Like where we very vividly see their pain from the beginning and watch them rise through it, and how different it is when they come out triumphant on the other side. Like, we love that, right? So it's like, I can handle all the pain and suffering as long as I can see at the end that there is that triumph, right? Like that's gotta, and then we just embrace those people. It's that, I'm just thinking of like every single football movie I've ever seen in my life, right? Like it like starts out with like all of this suffering, and then, yay, we won the state championship or whatever it is. And this,
and then they never show the week after.
Exactly.
They never show Rudy like 30 years later.
Rudy was exactly what I was thinking of.
They don't show Rudy like trying to like get a job now.
Right.
It's like that. That's right. And we do get trapped in that idea because, we're not recognizing that we want to get to this state of, we want to get to this place, we want to get to this point of. So we think, and this goes back to kind of what we had talked about before, is this belief that there's some relief coming. Right. You know, that I live my life and I suffer through my life because I believe at some point there's relief to it. And I know I've talked about this before, and I think I can't remember if we've done it on podcasts or webisodes, but it's this idea, you know, like you're driving home and you have to go pee really bad, right? You're like, oh man. And the closer to home you get, the worse it gets and the more painful it is. But if you weren't driving home, you could probably hold it for another hour.
If you were almost to your destination.
But the moment you start thinking relief's coming, it becomes more painful.
Yes.
And that's what's so interesting to me is we live our lives emotionally like we have to pee.
Yes.
You know? And we keep thinking that somehow some magic button's going to come, some magic pill is going to come, and the media is more than willing to sell it to you.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah,
absolutely.
we got what you're looking for. You just need to buy this. You need to wear that. You need to eat this. And if you do this and click on this, swipe up. If you want to learn how to feel different and feel better, just swipe up here and click on the link and, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
And it's all based upon the idea of selling you a pain-free life. Rather than stepping back and embracing pain and saying, okay, this is necessary or is this unnecessary? So necessary emotional pain and discomfort helps us to learn, to progress, and to grow and to develop coping skills. Unnecessary emotional pain and discomfort comes from an overconnection to the external world. So we become overly connected to all the things beyond our reach, overly connected to all the people, all the things, the stuff, information, media, all of this overconnection. This is where the suffering comes. But the funny part is that the unnecessary is the one we create.
Yes.
The necessary is what we experience. So I want to really say that again, because some of you I know are taking notes. Unnecessary emotional pain, discomfort is what we create. Necessary emotional pain is what we experience. We allow ourselves to create unnecessary emotional pain and discomfort and experience it, but we created it.
Right.
But man, if we just eliminated that, that's like half your battle.
Right. Probably even more than half the battle, probably. Maybe it's a 60-40 experience in life, right?
It may feel that way. And so we look at that unnecessary emotional pain and discomfort that we experience every day, you know, and that's the part that I think is really important, is that we look at pain as though it's a bad thing.
Right.
And that's where we get into trouble, is we look at pain as though it's a bad thing, and that's why we can't see the two kinds of emotional pain and discomfort. We see pain as something that is an indicator that there's something wrong with you.
Exactly. And like going back to the ones that we create, right? Like that over comparison, that external environment, and now hooking that into, oh, what's wrong with me, right? Like something is wrong. To be able to eliminate that altogether is so completely powerful. Like knowing that you have the capacity and the power to do that, right? Whereas the pain that we experience, we're going to experience it. Like whatever cause and effect relationship or whatever thing in the cosmos that is like, oh, this is a necessary pain, right? That we're going to be experiencing to be able to learn and grow and develop and all of those amazing things that all of us are striving for. Yet we want to do that pain-free.
Right.
Can I just do that without the pain?
Can I just do it without the discomfort?
Which the answer is no.
No.
I'm sorry.
No.
You cannot.
Yeah. And I think that's, using the body as a metaphor can really kind of help draw this out even more. Is, I think about physical exercise and the physical pain that we go through. So you go to the gym, you work out your legs, and then what can't you do for the rest of the week?
Sit nicely. Like you just fall into your chair.
Your face, man.
I know.
Sit. nicely, like you're trying to find a way to put it without cussing. I know, because we all go through it. Is like, oh, that pain, that discomfort. And so because of that pain and discomfort, we go through, the muscles have to stretch, the muscles fibers have to break down, the muscle fibers themselves have to then realign and reconnect and multiply in order to make the muscle larger. Well, that process is a traumatic experience for the muscle tissue, and that's what's so unique about the body is if you just look at the muscle tissue itself and the process of muscle development, it's astounding to me how we are as human beings. You take an individual that can go from, and I'm thinking of this before and after. There's an amazing football player. I love him. Played for the Houston Texans, J.J. Watt, and he shows his senior high school picture versus his picture of today. And if you put the two of them together, it looks like he morphed into the Hulk.
Yeah.
Like he went from this normal looking dude to Hulk. And but the process that the body had to go through to get him to that point is an astounding one, and is amazing if you think about how the human body is as an organism. And I'm not going to sit here and try and pretend like I'm some doctorate on that stuff. But emotionally, it's the same thing.
Yes, the parallels are exactly the same.
So we have to go through emotional pain and discomfort. We have to go through loss. We have to go through loss of loved ones. We have to go through breakups. We have to go through loss of jobs. We have to go through rejection. We have to go through being teased and taunted and bullied and all these things that are necessary emotional pain and discomforts, feeling alone. And those things are things that are like the breaking down of the muscle fiber in the tissue. But once it regains itself, it is twice as big and twice as strong. And there's a lot more depth and capacity to handle loads of more emotional burden.
Right.
And so that's really important. But the unnecessary emotional pain and discomfort is like running through a field of cactuses and rolling around. You know what I mean?
Like treating a field of cactus as if it were a pool, a swimming pool.
Swimming pool. You're just gonna dive into it, or go hug a cactus, and it's like we become so offended and so upset, but yet we're the ones that threw ourselves into that pile of cacti, and now we're stuck with all these burrs and these thorns and thistles that are inside of us that have been self-created, and that's not necessary. Will we learn from them? Yes, but the difference in that situation is that there's going to be a level of trauma that will be left in the body that wasn't necessary.
Right.
Does that make sense? What I'm saying? Now, I'm not saying that. So the everyday, and again, using walking the metaphor farther, down the road a little farther, the everyday discomfort of life, like the loss of job, loss of loved one, the everyday stuff. Now the trauma, that's different.
Right.
When we get into trauma, traumatic events, where we have, I think back to 2001 with the Twin Towers going down. And that was an emotional trauma. That now becomes a wound, and a wound that's open and hurt. Sexual abuse or any form of abuse. And when I'm talking about bullying being a natural process, I'm not talking about the chronic traumatic bullying. I'm talking about somebody makes fun of you at school and bullies you because, you dropped your books in the hallway. That in and of itself, that's the natural everyday, that's going to make you stronger stuff.
Right.
Now the trauma, pain, emotional pain and discomfort, it's still necessary. That's the hard part for people to differentiate, is even though we have experienced that trauma that somebody else may have imposed, or it may be intrusive, it is a part of life. It is required for us to learn and progress from it. And ironically, or the thing that's so strange to me about it is, at some point everybody has to experience it.
Yeah.
Everybody experiences trauma to some level.
I completely agree.
And those wounds and those scars will be left. Now, contrast that to diving into cactus.
Right.
Right? Now, diving into cactus, now I'm doing that to myself, and I'm traumatizing myself. And there's a difference between the necessary emotional pain and discomfort of trauma that comes from living and existing. And I know I'm going to get a lot of comments and a lot of mad people out there going, well, we shouldn't have trauma. You're saying that's okay. And no, I'm not.
Absolutely not.
No,
like
I'm not
saying the acts are okay.
No,
absolutely.
And I'm not saying that everybody. No, you're misunderstanding if you've gone down that path.
Right.
That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that it is a part of process of life of living around other people, being in communities, being in societies, being in families. That there is going to be that trauma, and on some level, you're going to experience it because it's a part of your journey and process. The end. Now, me being a person that's experienced lots of that,
right.
I know for a fact where I'm coming from on that. But the trauma that we create ourselves by diving into the cacti, that is, again, something that wasn't done to us, but what are doing to ourselves. And that pain can come from being overly connected to other people.
Right.
By being overly connected to what other people think of us and how they feel about us and what did they do to us and how do they value us, and being overly connected to information and media and all these things that are traumatizing us on a regular basis. So within the unnecessary emotional pain and discomfort, you have your average unnecessary emotional pain and discomfort, and then you have your traumatic unnecessary emotional pain and discomfort. And then in the necessary, you have the average everyday, and then you have the trauma of that.
The trauma pieces.
And there are pieces that we have to experience. And so the only thing that we can do is take the unnecessary emotional pain and discomfort and minimize it, and then learn from it.
Right.
And
because pain is one of our greatest teachers, which is kind of how we got started on this topic at the end of the last one where we were talking about relationships and cycles. So if you haven't listened to that podcast, go check it out too, because it's going to be a nice bridge and segue into this. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, you go. I love that. Go on that. Keep walking on that.
Well, and I just like to take it to I love. Oh, sorry, my brain's got 100 thoughts going on right now. So
that's a great part about the podcast. We can do whatever we want.
It's
not a video like our webisodes. We can stutter stumble.
And you guys still love me, right? In all of my humanity, I know you do. Thank you. But like using that as the litmus now, right? As the thing that we're going to hold up. So if I'm feeling,
so litmus, explain litmus.
So, and I might be saying it incorrectly, but like, I just remember in high school in science class, like you have a litmus paper, right? And to determine what chemical is in front of you, you put the litmus strip in it and it changes color depending on the acidity or whatever.
Right.
In the chemical that's in front of you. So you can decide, okay, is this a base? Is this an acid? Where is it coming at? Blah, blah, blah. So using that, so we're experiencing pain.
So that's the test.
This is the test. Here I am in pain. This is not great, right? So now I can take my litmus strip and look at it as, okay, is this necessary pain or is this unnecessary pain? Have I created this? Is this something, am I looking outside of myself and over attaching to something and that's creating my pain? And if that's the case, then there are a number of different things that you can do in order, and I'm sure we're going to be going through some different ideas about how to work through that. And if it is unnecessary, if it is necessary, then looking at those experiences as, okay, what is it that I need to be learning? What's going to help me grow? What's going to be helping me move into the human that I always have the capacity of being, right? We're always there. We just have to go through these experiences and able to unlock our higher potential and our higher purpose. And where we always come back as life coaches is, and what coping skills can I use and what can grow from this in order to help me progress and grow? Right? And so I love this two kinds of emotional pain as the litmus to, okay, can I just like learn how to let this go and not overly attach and really work on my inner environment, my inner self-worth, getting my value from me and not from somebody else, or comparing my life to that of other people, right? Or is this something that I'm experiencing that is going to help further develop me as a person? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, very much. Yeah. And I think it was well said. And when we use that, that's where we have to differentiate between what is necessary, what is unnecessary.
Yes.
And so you're right. I do want to start stepping into the I want to stop stuttering. I want to step into the solutions. And one of the first solutions that you're kind of leaning into it and alluding to it is as we look at that litmus test, as we look at the results, right? And that's the reality. So we sit back and we go, well, what are my results? Okay. So it's something I'm creating. That's my result. I figured out I'm doing this because I'm overly connected to how Agnes Jones, feels about, my cooking. I don't know. Right.
Dean, is Agnes Jones a real person? I'm sure she is. I'm sure she exists.
I don't know.
But
Maybe
does
she'll
she
message
exist
us
in your
at some
life?
point and go, I'm right here. I'm in Alabama. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, so I can be
We love you, Agnes.
I can be so caught up in, like what her thoughts are and what her feelings and what she said at the dinner party. And I can be so caught up in, all those things and be frustrated that she may have, buffeted me, was rude or whatever. So then I step back and go, okay, you know what? This is me traumatizing me. This is me hurting me. This is me diving into something that really doesn't matter. But the only way we can do that is with this next step. The next step is, we have to stop looking at pain as an indicator that there's something wrong with you.
Right.
And we have to look at our pain through different, as you always say, lenses. And we have to look at the different lens of help me understand me.
Oh, I love it. It's
right?
perfect. Yes.
Help me understand. Like, okay, not, oh, great. I'm just care too much about what she thinks. I do this all
Here
the time.
I am, getting my value outside.
I give my
of
value
me.
externally. I'm such a loser. I should know better.
How many times have I tried to do this?
Right? Yeah. And then we're guilting and we're shaming.
So much shame.
That's the first thing I want to challenge all you y'all listeners. I want to challenge all the listeners and those listening in is, number one, step away from the shame. Step away. Put it down. just put it down. Just back up.
Yep.
Just step away. Just back up. The shame itself is not a teacher. Shame 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 does not teach you anything. Right. Guilt can teach you. There's healthy guilt is what we need. Healthy guilt says, hey, I did something. I need to fix it. Unhealthy guilt is not fixing it and just hitting, this constant snooze, so to speak, and not deal with it or not cope with it or ignoring it or
once again
fixing
using it
the
to
problem.
Re-traumatize ourselves.
Yes,
right? Yes,
and then fixing the problem and hanging on to it, all those things. So, but healthy guilt helps you learn. Shame serves no purpose. So, one of the first tools in really helping us with pain and internalizing pain as a teacher is to step away from the judgment of guilt, unhealthy guilt, and shame.
Absolutely. Just allowing it to be like the flag that comes up, right? Like, hey, take a look at this.
Yeah.
Like we really need to pay attention right here. Let's take a look at this instead of like, geez, here we are again.
I did it again.
Pain.
I always do this.
Yeah.
What's wrong with me? Happens way more than it needs to.
Yes.
And the shoulds. I should have this. I should have that. I could have done this. I could have done that. And we do that. And I remember very vividly one night falling asleep and trying to fall asleep, I should say, and guilting myself over my parenting. And I remember vividly just laying there, just guilting myself over, man, I wish I hadn't said it this way. I wish I hadn't said this. I wish I hadn't said that. And and all the things that I was critiquing and just really beating myself up to the point where emotionally inside I was so full of shame. I was shaming myself so profoundly. And I remember the next day getting up and moving through my day, and my kids didn't give a flying rip. and quite honestly, I don't think they would even remember.
Right. They probably don't.
But I remember. I remember right where I was. I was in our house in Santa Clara. It was a June, mid-June. I mean, I could tell you every detail that I traumatized myself over, but it was that shaming. And I remember the next day really stepping back from that and thinking, okay, hold on a minute. You know, are you using this pain to teach you, or are you shaming yourself with it? And that's where I had to step away and start going, okay, well, what did I learn, and what am I going to do different? And how am I going to let go?
Right.
Because I can't change it. It is what it is. So really using pain as an indicator of what's wrong with me is the most devastating thing we could ever do. But if we can use pain as a teacher, as a mentor, then we progress.
Absolutely. And this, for me, Dean, this goes across all the pain, right? The unnecessary and the necessary, right? As it surfaces, we're gonna be like, oh, okay, here's some pain. This is the little red. I don't know why it's always red. For me, it's like when you're out on the lake or something and you're skiing, somebody
falls.
I'm the flag girl because I have a really interesting fear of deep water. Even though I'm a water sign and I love water, I'm just going to hang out in the boat.
It's the fear of what's below.
It's like, so I'm the one that would wave
see.
the little red flag. So that for me, that's the image that I see when, okay, I've got this pain that's coming up. This little red flag is waving. So now, regardless of if it is necessary or unnecessary, I'm going to look for the lesson. I'm going to look for that teacher and be able to differentiate. Okay, this is a lesson. This is the teacher that's coming through that's going to help me progress and grow, or this is pain that I've brought upon myself. And the teacher is awesome. What am I going to do about it now? How am I going to not repeat this pattern and learn from that? Right. So either way, it doesn't matter what pain's coming in. All pain serves a purpose to teach us.
Right. Yeah. And those are things I can relate, you know, going back to our metaphor of the body.
Yes.
You know, I can relate, especially when I was young and full of like just all sorts of energy.
I was going to say vim and vigor.
Vim and vigor and pep and all those things. No, I just remember being a kid, like I was like always willing to like jump off a cliff, you know, like with a trash bag and see if I could, you know, float. And, you know, that. And so many times I like, well, that was a bad idea.
Yeah. That didn't work. That didn't work out very well.
Even remotely close to how I thought that was going to go. And my femur is now sticking out of my leg. You know, no, I never had that, thankfully. But, you know, I had a twisted ankle, or I had, you know, some pain that I was experiencing. And we sit back and you can just lay there in pain and agonizing from the choice that you made to dive into the cactus field and self-loathe and shame, or you can step back, get out, start pulling out the quills and the barbs and the burrs and start learning. And that's going to be an important part, you know, as we're dealing with pain. The other piece that we've got to do with pain is we've got to disconnect pain from the idea of there is some form of relief out there. That's the second thing I would really challenge people with is stop looking for relief. Right? I start to feel pain. I don't want to feel pain, so I've got to find relief. Something's got to take the pain away. And everybody on Instagram, for some reason, doesn't experience this pain because they're all smiles and happy. I don't see any posts of people being sad and crying. And if I do, I don't want to see it anyway, and I'm just going to tell them, shut up. I don't want to see your stuff.
This is not the right place to air that.
This is not the right venue. You know, all this nonsense. But the problem that we have with it is that we have coupled it with relief. Instead of stepping back and going, okay, pain serves a purpose. I don't want to look for relief from the pain. I want to look for the lesson in the pain. And the relief itself comes when I just learn the lesson. That's where the relief comes.
Right.
If you really want relief, then find the lesson.
Right, exactly.
Right? But otherwise I don't. Now I'm going to turn towards avoidance.
Right.
And now I'm going to start numbing out. I'm going to get on my video games. I'm going to get in, smoke a little weed. I'm going to like drink some alcohol. I'm going to have sex.
That's exactly where I was going. Look for the next relationship to preoccupy myself.
Yeah, get on the porn, get on the, go to work, go excessively exercise, go do high risk behaviors. All of the crazy things that we do to avoid. I'm going to eat some more.
Yes.
Whatever I need to do to avoid the feelings that I don't want to feel. And that's the part where I think we've got to start recognizing is the reason that I'm moving down those addictions, the reason that addictions exist, the reason that these things exist is because in my mind I'm suffering.
Right.
And in my mind I need relief.
Yes. And how counterintuitive is it to lean into the pain, lean into the suffering, look for those teaching moments, because that's where, I love how you brought that out, Dean, that's where the relief is. That's where we stop those cyclical patterns, the keep looping, like we just did one on why we recycle through relationships, right? But we do this with pain as well,
right?
It's like, oh my gosh, this endless loop of the same pain trigger, the same button that we're pushing because we haven't learned from it. We haven't allowed it to be our teacher. We haven't allowed it to grow and heal and teach us the things that we need to. So of course we're going to keep cycling around to it because that's part of being a human. Until we can learn and grow from something, we're going to keep tripping over it. It's going to keep cycling around.
You brought out in the last podcast is the reason that it persists is because we're not learning from it.
Exactly.
The minute we learn from it, we level up, so to speak.
Yes.
And that is the truth. And so you see these people with these high levels of pain tolerance, right? And I see it even in life itself, and using the physical metaphor. There are a lot of people out there that can take a lot of physical pain, and they can get through things. They can feel pain. They can kind of gut through it, and they've. I
just think about the guy that like gets in freezing cold water.
Yeah, he jumps in it and swims, and
he's just he's chill, but
super chill about it. Yeah, and he's learned how to deal with the pain and how to compartmentalize
sword
it.
swallowers and
so they've leveled themselves up, right? Well, what if we could do that emotionally? What if we could level up emotionally with the same type of pain tolerance? Not that we go out and we create pain like diving in ice cold water, but in the sense that emotionally things don't ruffle me. Things don't knock me off my balance. Things don't knock me off my center. People's opinions are their opinions, and my life is my life. And the more that we get that level of constitution within ourselves, that we're just like, bam, I'm comfortable being me. And I'm okay, then we become, these people that people lean into and people, gravitate towards, and people feel compelled to be around because now this person is emotionally safe.
Right. And
emotionally safe people attract, right? They attract people. They're like, man, I don't know why, but I like that guy or I like that girl, because they don't ruffle easy. They don't flinch in a fight. They don't panic if somebody calls them names or insults them or et cetera, they've learned how to control and master themselves. And self-mastery is always going to be the key in all of these things. That's where we're doing this. So kind of going back.
Well, I think it's important to point out that the way that you get that way is to lean into pain.
Right.
And treat it as a teacher.
Create a tolerance.
Exactly. Instead of constantly looking to flee and avoid.
Right.
That's what creates that emotional security, stability.
So leaning back, that's the part where, going back to the beginning and kind of pulling the beginning to the front or to the end here is we think we've created this belief about who we are based upon the idea of pain and comfort. And I believe that I'm not a good person because I have pain. I'm not a good person because I make mistakes. I'm not a good person because I feel this way. I'm not a good person. And I'm always seeking comfort, and everybody else seems to have it, but I can't find it, and everybody else seems to be better than me, et cetera, et cetera. So we create this belief that's so false about who we are.
Oh, so false. Like black curtain, so false. Like not even like a nice thin sheet, right?
Not
like
even a veil.
So absolutely disconnecting and false.
And it's such a self-deceiving process. And so as we keep pulling these things down, and as the purpose of these podcasts to really start to break down, and we really wanted to call our podcast "You've Been Mind Effed," and we've since kind of stepped away from that extremism as a direction, but really that's what we wanted to call it, because in our lives we've really been mind effed, but mainly from ourselves.
Yes.
We're the ones that are perceiving this world and experiencing this world. And by the time you're about 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, you're interpreting world on your own. So all of us out there that want to blame our parents and blame our past and blame the 5th grade teacher and blame, this and blame that, sorry, but those days are gone.
Right.
You've been able to interpret the world the way you interpret it for many years now. Unless, of course, you're 9 or 10 listening to this, then
and
relax.
In that case, wow, are you ahead of the curve
Yeah,
if you're
thanks for
listening to this
listening,
at 9 or
if
10?
you've endured. But I think that's the part where I want to kind of lead in, and maybe for next podcast, is I really do want to talk about the avoidant piece. And I want to talk about why addiction and why dependency and why these things are so prevalent in our world, and how media is telling you it's okay.
Right, fueling that fire,
and
for
that's
sure.
My biggest anger and frustration. 30 years of working to help people understand themselves better, only to feel like every step of the way the media is trying to give you a different message. And that's what I want to talk about next, if you're okay with that.
Yep, no, that's perfect. Absolutely perfect. So as we're getting ready to wrap up, I think it's just really vital that we kind of lean into basically the challenge, right? From this day until the end of days.
Till the end of days.
when you've reached the arrival point and everyone's mourning their loss of you, right?
Right. You've evaporated. You've arrived and evaporated.
Is to really shift your perspective of pain and to embrace it as one of your greatest teachers, to look always for the purpose, and to be able to use that litmus test to decipher, is this necessary? Is this coming from an external place, or am I creating this for myself?
Right.
And really embracing how powerful you are as a human being to then change that, to have the capacity and the know-it-all and the bravery, because this is a process that is not for the faint of heart, by the way. This takes a lot of courage and a lot of bravery, and I would give you 100 high fives knowing that you were on this journey with us, to get this figured out, right? And to lean into those things and be able to just blossom and grow into the individuals that we need on the planet so desperately, right? Those that do attract others because of your emotional stability and security, because you have learned how to love and embrace the pain. So,
very cool.
Very cool.
So on that note, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Tune into our other ones, and also feel free to go to our webisodes. They're shorter vignettes that you can watch. They're just within about a 20-minute range that have a lot more content. So if you're enjoying the content that you're hearing from us, find us on our other mediums that we're using.
If you're hearing us say things like, coping skills, like we're leaning into that over there a lot.
So. A lot.
Go check them out.
Until next time. Are you
embrace the
off?
pain.
Embrace the pain. There's our hashtag. Hashtag embrace the pain.
Love you guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Next podcast.